A big week 6 is in the books for FJ's Draft League, as well as AEW itself with Redemption Week. A week full of high highs for AEW and low lows as well. Getting done before midnight EST, barely, is a great start, but a lot of us are now clamoring for some redemption for All in Wembley. Let me know your favorite match from Redemption as well. The last stretch of this first season of FJ's Draft League is here, so let's go over AEW Redemption as well as the standings. This first part here will pretty much be my thoughts on AEW Redemption as a whole. This was probably AEW's weakest pay-per-view of the year thus far. Not the greatest start for a new pay-per-view, but sometimes it happens. I think MJF getting hurt in the match against Roosh and needing some extra weeks off was kind of a big factor in this. It, in my mind, shifted it from MJF and Kenny running it back, or Kenny just winning the title at Redemption. It also likely shifted Speedball and Kevin Knight from here to probably Wembley as well. Kenneth was fine, because he's Kenny Omega, and even though we all knew Kevin Knight wasn't winning, had some of his best promos and some stellar matches this past month, and will be just fine at the top with Fletcher, Konosuke, Bandito, Jay White, Ospreay, and MJF for a lot of years to come. The latter match was sick, even though we kinda knew Speedball was winning. That's the biggest theme, I think, is it kinda loses some luster when you can predict everything that's gonna happen fairly easily. What is the dog doing, Nicholas Jackson? I'm a sucker for storytelling and lore matches in wrestling, something AEW needs to do a little more of, because the Bucks versus Ospreay and Mox was sick. Very excited for post-divorce Will Ospreay getting his old buddies in Hangman and Swerve to have a fun little tussle with the Elite possibly. While the Death Riders can go do vaguely homoerotic Death Riders things. If Bandito didn't have his ROH title still, he'd be holding like every mid-tier title in AEW at this point, because he cannot have a bad match with anyone. He and Kyle Fletcher was astounding. The match itself had its off vibes, but Maya winning was insane vibes as a follow-up in the match between Hikaru Shida and Maya World. A moment for the quote, TK doesn't build new stars, unquote, critics, because Maya has been on a crazy run these past few months now. Andrade got a well-deserved self-depancing new title and big win against the Don Fallis family. He claimed the national title from Mark Davis in a great match. Much like Tekla, who we'll talk about in a second, Dunkzilla has done a great job in singles, and maybe some tag or trios gold with Jake Doyle is on the horizon. Willow winning was awesome. For her to come back from battling injury, fighting depression, and being so open about it as well is refreshing. Willow has been one of my favorites for years now, and her run back with Monet should be even better than their New Japan bout in 2023 and their Double or Nothing match last year. I hope they have a big Wembley match for Tekla as well, Kairi Hojo perhaps, because she did a phenomenal job with her title run in her own right. Though there's now one less bitch on the roster, as Willow has now ascended. But the bad comes with having too much wrestling, where the best wrestle and matches just being too long that should have been 4 to 5 minutes shorter. I know the wrestling first guy is complaining about match length. What a loser. Not to mention, even for a guy who could usually pick a pay-per-view card at a high rate, this card was unusually predictable. Spoilers, I along with Goose ended up picking 8 out of 10 of the main card matches correctly. Painmaker has been pretty lame even since New Japan in my and many other people's eyes. If you've been around me, you know I've been sick of Jericho and Ciampa since even before the beach break match. And though the match itself ended up being fine enough, again, Tommaso Ciampa needs to be freed. Please let him be free. I said this to Reaper earlier last week, that I love Hikaru Shida, but it seems like she might be at the tail end of being a weekly wrestling gal. And these past few weeks just didn't feel like the Shida of old to me. The right person won in my world, but the match just felt really weird and off to me the whole time. Cope and Cage, while doing fine enough in ring, don't need almost 20 minutes to dispatch Claudio and Pac when a shorter match benefits these four greatly. These old fellas are still okay, but aren't my favorite when they're fighting from behind. Which is most matches, because everyone is just a step or two quicker than them, and a decade or two younger. The double chain match between the Bang Bang Gang and the Dogs was a fun idea on paper, but it went far too long, had far too scary of a spot between David Finlay and Jay White, and it didn't really click overall. It could have just been White and Finlay in a match. Hell, even just those two alone in a dog collar match or something. Unironically, if you just put CNC versus the Death Riders and the Bang Bang Gang versus the Dogs on the pre-show, you save 40 minutes on the runtime and the main card gets infinitely better. Not to mention as well, I think Tekla and Willow should have been the main event of Redemption. Letting Willow celebrate to end would have been a great touch, though I fully understand the very intriguing post-match novella between the Elite, Death Riders, and Will Ospreay. The cream in the middle of this card was just not enough for the two solid cookies surrounding it. The most I'm on social medias nowadays is during AEW or WWE shows, and man, you guys were calling it one of AEW's worst pay-per-views ever. Shit like AEW Fastlane. And that was all before Andrade and Mark Davis even started. Peak, I'm gonna watch 2/3 of a movie and complain about how the whole movie is bad without being done yet. Disgusting. It ended up being a show with a lot of good to great matches and storyline progression with some very bad lows. The crowd was up and down all night too. They tried to come back after the Maya win and the Bucks and CNC stare down, but the matches themselves beforehand didn't help. The endings though did just enough to help Jericho and Ciampa onward become a lot better. All in Wembley, all Redemption will need a redemption next year. Luckily, most of even the current roster, aside from Cope and Cage, are still very much young enough to not have to worry about anything but injuries a year from now to improve on this pay-per-view's quality. Now enough about AEW Redemption. That's my review. Go watch the first three and the last three matches. They were great. Fletcher versus Bandito, by the way, was my standout match of the evening. But it's time for the Draft League updates. Starting with the FJ's Redemption Art drops that Chibi and Magic did before the pay-per-view. Magic dropped Truth Magnum, Turbo Floyd, and Daniel Garcia, electing to keep the rock hard now stray Bullet, Juice Robinson, and Colton Gunn. While Chibi decided to drop Orange Cassidy and Mystico, while keeping Claudio Castagnoli. FJ also had a bit of a miscue in dropping Roderick Strong for Nick Jackson. Nick and Matt Jackson were fine pickups between Goose and FJ, mind you. But he told me he was banking that the Demand were going to take the titles off those damn conglomerators on Collision or Redemption, but those matches went to Dalton Castle and the Outrunners and the Swirl. But it looks like they might have a good shot this Wednesday. Sometimes the risk lose you some much needed points in the short term. Chibi's team had another damn solid week and a great pay-per-view. Even though she had lost the TBS title, Cope retained his and Claudio also got his title shot in as well. Not to mention his whole roster, aside from Mystico, who was either actually hurt or storyline hurt, made an appearance this week. His only blunder was kind of like FJ's, where he dropped OC before the pay-per-view and lost a few points off the conglomeration retaining on the pre-show. FJ has turned into the lower scoring of the two consistent teams alongside Reaper. as his team is the only one to have everyone featured on TV this week. He just didn't have the plethora of title defenses like last week, as you'd expect. Kenneth led the way for him. A lot of this is also due to him dropping Roddy and losing those extra title defense and retaining points. Otherwise, between Omega, Bandito, Okada, Tekla, Jay White, Nick Jackson, and Ricochet, he has a lot of people who already have title matches, should end up chasing a title, holding a title, or just having a big match at Wembley. Goose had one of the weaker pay-per-view weeks, but it's more because she doesn't have title holders aside from Moxley and Lena Cross. Everyone was on TV this week aside from Swerve Strickland, who should be back imminently, and Darby did get a title shot, while Lena did defend hers as well on Dynamite. Matt Jackson, as I mentioned, is a fine pickup, and Mike Bailey essentially won an eliminator match, ladder match, and challenged Kyle Fletcher for the international title at Grand Slam Mexico next week. Magic is looking to make the most of dropping Truth, Turbo, and Danny because he had a fine enough week, but one of the weakest overall pay-per-view points-wise. When MJF gets back, he will get even better. How do I know? Well, Andrade knocked off Mark Davis to win the national title, not to mention the Brawling Birds seemingly being the gals to knock off Vine Dominion at Wembley, meaning that Jamie Hayter and Alex Windsor on Mora's team should be on TV a lot more heading to Wembley. Same with Athena heading to Death Before Dishonor next month as well. Mora had a great week, and she didn't even have Take, who is still doing the G1, and Windsor, who, like I mentioned, should be showing up probably this week. What she did have is 4 title defenses, 3 title retentions, and 1 title win. Dungzilla may have lost the national title, but Maya World replaced it with the TBS Championship, while our father Christian as well as Kevin Knight retain their respective titles this week. Reaper is forever Mr. Consistent, and this week is Mr. Big Points as well. And he was missing 2 people as well this week in Chris Statlander and Hangman. Fortunately for him, he had Kyle O'Reilly conglomerating in both of his matches this week to defend and retain the trio's gold. Megan Bayne retained hers too in that no DQ match on Dynamite with the Sisters of Sin, while Fletcher retained against Bandito in that crazy good match on Redemption as well. Hell, Leo Rush even had another title defense on ROH this week. Ospreay has been everywhere this week as well between promos and matches to help out. Finally, Willow knocked off Tekla in a fun match, seeing Willow finally climb to the top of the AEW women's division. Just a damn strong week by Reaper with a great group to head towards Wembley with. Before we go over points, I missed adding a few over the past number of weeks, and decided to just add them this week after the pay-per-view. Most of these were just missing some title shot points I forgot to tack on to people over the last number of weeks. Magic will be getting a +5, Goose will be getting a +6, Reaper will be getting a +4, while FJ and Chibi each get a +2. Prediction picks! Goose and FJ, as I mentioned, correctly predicted 8 out of the 10 matches on the main card. Both of them missed on the Dogs winning, while FJ was mostly praying for Ciampa out of anguish, and Goose thought the Jungle Boy from the jungle was winning the ladder match. Magic, Mora, and Reaper all got 6 out of the 10 matches correct. Mora being the only one to pick Kevin Knight, as well as the Dogs, is a wild stat. While the other misses were very much the most 50-50 picks, aside from all the Jack Perry picks between them. Finally, Chibi got 4 out of 10 correct on what ended up being a very predictable card, as I've mentioned already many times. He's got to lock in the coming weeks. Watching a tiny bit of the TV or even just YouTube highlights would help greatly, because I think getting 6 points should have been pretty easy for this one. Lock in, Chibi! They all get an extra 8, 6, and 4 points based on how many they got correct. But also, I'm announcing FJ's all-in prediction market, fully funded by the federal government. each team before Dynamite and Collision, and Death Before Dishonor and All In 2, with announced matches for those shows, may send me their picks for who will win those matches. I also trust them not to look up any taping spoilers if Collision doesn't happen to be live. First through third place get 1 point each for a correct prediction, but lose 2 points for a wrong one. Fourth through sixth place get 1, 2, or 3 points respectively. Fourth gets 1 point, and so on, with no penalties for getting a prediction wrong. You don't have to participate, and I must have your picks before the given show starts. No placing predictions mid-show. And yes, you can make predictions and not use them for points, because I will also be keeping track of all these picks. And if you have the most correct after All In Wembley, you can nab an extra 10 points to your final total. So you can still send me picks for the shows, but you don't have to wager your points if you're in the top 3 in a given week if you don't want to. You must tell me beforehand though if you're just sending them in to me for the prediction market or just the end of the season. The standings are as follows, so pay attention. Magic is still in 6th place with 195 points total, getting 61 this week. The MJF injury has cost him these past few weeks, while just overall it might have taken him just too long to move on from Dalton Castle and the Outrunners. But thanks to FJ's all-in prediction market, he can easily make up a few points here and there every week to claw his way back up. Chibi is still in 5th place with 220 points total, getting 76 points this week. A top 3 week. His roster is coming to its own. The problem is mostly, as I'll talk about in a second with Goose as well, is that they don't have a ton of championships right now, so it limits them a bit. Goose is still in 4th place with 230 points total, getting 71 points this week. She's been doing fine, getting a ton of appearances, much like Chibi, making moves, and really only missing out on one person, Swerve. The problem is, she only has a couple of titles on her team right now, in Jon Moxley and Lena Cross, which, as I just mentioned, kind of limits her in a given week. Mora has dropped to 3rd place with 243 points total, getting 74 this week. Really only hampered by Takeshita being in the G1 right now. Davis, losing his national title, hurts a bit, but Maya replaced it with the TBS Championship, making it hurt a little less. She's still got Monet in her big Wembley match, Kevin Knight with the TNT title, and Christian with the tag titles as well. FJH dropped to 2nd place with 245 points total, netting the 2nd most this week at 77 points. There's not much more to say than what I did earlier, other than his team is pretty much set up for this Wembley run, with everyone starting almost immediately on Dynamite this week, hoping the demand beat the conglomeration. Reaper has jumped to 1st place with 259 points, thanks to a monster week this week, netting him 92 points. Much like FJ, there's not much more to say that I haven't. His team is very much looking good for the run to Wembley, and like FJ, he already has rooting interest this week set for Dynamite with the trios titles on the line. So there it is! My thoughts on AEW Redemption, and all your updates for the final push until Wembley for the Draft League. The MVP this week is Kyle O'Reilly, with both of his matches being title matches and successful defenses. See y'all next week for our next update. Insert something funny to close out. Wait.